I told you I had just left the hospital the day before, never to look back. Jumped on a plane, went to Reno, Nevada, entered the conference, and one of the first things that caught my eye was an ozone generator.
Welcome to the Healthy Reasonings podcast with Dr. Andre. You are now listening to your number one source for clear, unfiltered conversations about your health and wellness. Join us every Tuesday for success stories, educational topics, and interviews with wellness experts from around the world. You can listen to this podcast on your computer, phone, or any other electronic device that streams podcasts, or download each episode and listen to it on the go. Let's get started with today's episode.
The Healthy Reasonings podcast, could it be episode 24? It is, I think, episode 24 of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. And we are very grateful for all the support we've received over the past 24 episodes. It really is a milestone, and an even greater one coming up at the next episode, which will be episode 25. And I want to tell you in advance that for episode 25, we are going to have probably the most special guest that we've had on the podcast. For those of you who know me well, you will know that there's only one person to whom I would give that accolade of being the most special guest I could ever have on my podcast. And that person will be on with us next episode 25 to ring in 25 episodes of the Healthy Reasonings podcast, your number one podcast for clear, unfiltered information about your health and wellness. And my name is Dr. Andre Williams. I am sometimes I don't even know how to describe myself, and I'm an integrative oncologist, which means I take the best of both worlds, both the conventional training I've received over several years and the naturopathic/holistic exposure I've received, learning from different great pioneers across the world, and we combine them to provide the best options for our patients and the best information for our healthy reasoners. And the information that we share here is not intended to be medical advice for your specific medical condition. Rather, of course, we recommend that if you have a specific medical concern or complaint, you seek advice from a healthcare professional of your choice and get advice about your personal and specific concern. The information here is for educational purposes only, and it is meant to be lots of fun, hence the name Healthy Reasonings. In Jamaica, when we say we're going to hold our reasoning, or hold our reasonings, nobody does that, I guess. We're talking about having a nice, cool, cheerful conversation. And so that's what we really mean when we say a healthy reasoning or healthy reasonings. That's what we're trying to achieve here. Today's podcast episode is going to be on a topic that has changed my career completely. And that topic is the use of ozone, or what we call ozone therapy. Or if you want to be really, really politically correct, you can refer to it as medical ozone techniques. Medical ozone techniques. And the story behind ozone, for me, is simply this, that if you listen to episode 1, you would have heard about my journey having completed my conventional training as a hematologist and oncologist. My career path was set. I'd actually won an award from the American Society of Clinical Oncology and international recognition for the work I was doing in my country. And around that same time, though, I made the bold decision to walk away from a hospital job that represented probably the rest of my career and to step out into the unknown. And what I've not shared on this podcast before is that the day following my very last day employed to the hospital as a consultant, the very next morning, I was on a flight to Reno, Nevada, in the United States, to attend a training workshop in medical ozone treatment. And I'll be quite honest with you, I did not really know what to expect. I had been recommended to do this course. I had a vague idea about what ozone treatment was. I'd heard about it in the past, but didn't know the extent of its capabilities and what it would mean for the many patients I have seen since then. So today we're talking a little bit about what ozone is. And I'm not going to use this particular episode to speak about all the different detailed cellular and biochemical reactions that take place when ozone is administered, but I want to give you a very broad overview of what ozone is so that you can make a decision about whether you want to hear more. And of course, I invite you to share. If you want to hear more, please share a little bit about your comments and questions. You know how to do that. You reach out to me on social media at WellnessDoc Jamaica, or you may WhatsApp us at 1-876-405-7831 to share your thoughts and ask any relevant questions. All right, so we're talking a little bit about ozone, and as I said, I'm going to give you a broad overview. There's a whole lot that I could share about the details of how ozone works. Perhaps one of the first things I should say is that the use of ozone as a medical treatment is based on the fact that ozone is simply an activated, or let's use the word electrified form of oxygen. So our healthy reasoners will know that oxygen exists, the oxygen molecule exists in the form of two atoms of oxygen joined together. And so generally when we're speaking about ozone, we're speaking about O2. Now, when there is a third oxygen atom that is added to that mix, what you get is something called O3. And O3 is a triatomic, meaning 3 atoms, molecule containing 3 oxygen atoms. And it is relatively volatile, meaning it doesn't stay in that O3 form forever, and it has a tendency to return preferentially to O2 plus an additional atom. Or in other cases, what it will do is it has an affinity to bind to other substances. And again, I don't want to get too technical, but believe me, I definitely could. So where have we heard the word ozone before? Well, we all know, for those of you born in the last 3 decades, or maybe a little bit more, you would remember that there's this little thing called the ozone layer. The ozone layer. And it is a protective part of the Earth's atmosphere. And of course, it is susceptible to damage by pollution. But what you would want to know also is that it is frequently regenerated, the layer that is. It is constantly being regenerated, or let's use regenerated, a really good word to use. Because of certain phenomena. For example, the phenomena called the Catatumbo lightning storms that take place somewhere in Venezuela. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, because ozone is formed when oxygen becomes electrified, then when lightning strikes, as it does very frequently in that region of the world, it converts the available oxygen in the air from O2 to O3. So that is a natural phenomenon for ozone production, which happens at least daily, right? And so that is one of the ways that the ozone layer is potentially regenerated. And so the whole concept of ozone now is a concept that says, well, if naturally ozone occurs by the use of God's own electricity to convert oxygen O2 to ozone O3, as early as the early 1900s, and I think a little bit before, the scientists, very great scientists, were trying to figure out how could we replicate this effect in the laboratory. And you'd be interested to hear some of the names that have been associated with these efforts. One of the most famous names being Nikola Tesla, one of the pioneers, if not the most noted pioneer of the concept of providing medical ozone. And in fact, he created the first ozone generator, which was simply a way to get oxygen to pass over an electrical gradient or electrical voltage to facilitate the same effect that lightning would have on the air in changing oxygen to ozone. And so he found a way to create that same phenomenon in the lab. And to make things very simple, essentially what we've done is we've built on those concepts and improved them over the past century or more to make the whole experience of converting oxygen to ozone in the lab safe, reproducible, and measurable. So what that means is we can have oxygen passing from, in my case and the case of many other practitioners, an oxygen cylinder. It passes via tubing into a very small generator device about the size of a laptop, where it passes over a gradient, and the flow of oxygen going into that device helps, as well as the setting of the voltage, helps determine the concentration of ozone gas that is produced on the other end. So ozone gas coming out of that generator comes out through specific tubing, silicone tubing, and then it can be used in a variety of ways for various medical applications. So passes over that gradient a little bit more slowly, and so we get more of the oxygen being converted into ozone, and so the concentration of the resulting mixture is stronger. The units of measurement for ozone gas are micrograms per milliliter. Micrograms per milliliter, sorry. That's how many micrograms are coming out in each milliliter of gas. And it does come out as a colorless gas, which is heavier than air. And so we can use that gas coming out in a variety of different ways. Now, let's talk a little bit about the gas itself. And the gas itself, it tends to have a very faint odor. Some people say when they smell it, it reminds them of the sea, which I find fascinating. I tend to agree. And it is generally very safe for use in various ways. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the ways shortly. The only thing about ozone gas is that it ought not to be inhaled. And the reason is simply this: because it is so powerful, when it interacts with the lung cells, the alveolar cells in the lungs, it can irritate them. And so what usually happens is if somebody were to inhale it, you'll find that they cough a lot. Now, you can determine for yourself just how dangerous that is. It will cause quite a bit of coughing, and some of us have learned the hard way. That's what happens when you inhale ozone gas. So it's not something you want to inhale directly because it is an irritant to the lungs. Outside of that, it is perhaps the most useful medical treatment that I myself have encountered in my entire career. And we're going to tell you why in a short while. But before we do that, I have a very special, what do you call it now? Let's use the word commercial break that I need you to observe very carefully, because there is a documentary that is being made on the history of ozone treatment and also its use across the world in a variety of offices, such as my own. And that documentary is about 55% funded at the moment, and I would like to invite all my healthy reasoners to pitch in as best as you can. I'm going to share the link, the Kickstarter link, so that you can participate in this valiant effort to get the word out about this amazing medical, use the word treatment for now, that is safe, almost completely non-toxic, and very active against a wide range of diseases and conditions when used in a variety of different ways. So let's take a quick break to hear a little bit about this initiative. I implore you to support as best as you can this Kickstarter effort.
What is the most important thing for life? One word. Oxygen. I saw in medical school that I was being programmed to be a pimp for the pharmaceutical industry. I hated myself for that, but that's all I knew at the time. Then when I learned there was another way to heal people, I looked for every way that I could to help people without giving them a chemical. Ozone has done more things for more conditions, for more patients than everything I've seen in conventional medicine combined. Ozone? That's an oxidant. Aren't we supposed to be scared of oxidants and into antioxidants? Because that was the craze at the time, which was proven false. I bought the machine, took it back to Alaska, and with my very first patients, they got better, stunning, and fast, and clean. It was hard to believe, and that changed my life. Ozone is oxygen. It's active oxygen. It's O3. Not O2. It looks complicated, but it's quite simple. Blood gets taken out of the patient, out of his vein, goes into the bottle, and then I use the machine to make ozone, which gets pumped into the bottle, mixes up with his blood. His blood turns red, and then the blood goes right back into the patient, and that's the treatment. It's a blood treatment. We're actually treating the blood. So, what does ozone do? It reduces inflammation. It's antiviral. It modulates the immune system. Why? Because of its mechanism of action. Oxygen delivery, circulation, uptaking mitochondria to make more energy, killing pathogens, modulating the immune system, and increasing antioxidant enzymes. You have a therapy that can do all these things and is basically 100% safe. Connect dots. Why isn't it out there?
Well, it's just so I can understand, like, what's the difference of what a steroid injection would do from what ozone would do?
Ozone does the same thing steroids do. It reduces inflammation, but at no risk. Steroids have risk. They break down cartilage, and they can screw up your body. Ozone doesn't do that, but it reduces inflammation. Your regular doctor's not going to bring this to you. He wasn't trained in it. And if he heard about it, he's going to think it's quackery because he didn't learn it in medical school.
Hi. This is a fabulous office. Look at me. I'm 91 and I'm doing great. Thanks to this ozone.
Those folders are charts of patients who have been seen in this clinic over the past year.
First, I had a Morton's neuroma in my foot, and I got a shot of ozone, and it was gone.
I came because I have rheumatoid arthritis. Right away, I felt better. My hands, I would wake up and before the ozone, I couldn't do this.
I had off the charts of 20 invasive pathogenic bacteria in these pockets in my bone. I would authentically say that ozone has saved my life.
I see a doctor, get this, her name is Peachy. I told her I just had a needle in this eye, and I was going to have that needle in my eye every month for the rest of my life.
The lab is, confirming the inflammation is low, and it's just not placebo effect, let's say.
Now, Dr. Peachy, I love the name, she sent me a 6-page email about ozone. Changed my life.
I've been here a few times for my back, actually. I threw my back out at the gym as well. Within 15 minutes, I'll back to normal.
Ozone is the biggest reason why I am healthy, the way I am healthy.
I'm not going to sit here and say ozone cures anything. Ozone stimulates your body to rise up and do the job that it's supposed to do. In goes the ozone. I don't know if you know this, Loopy, but in the course of well over 20 years, maybe 30 years, to the best of our knowledge, we've only lost 4 knees to the knife. In the old days of China, the doctors were paid when their patients were healthy. They were not paid when they were sick. We got away from that. If you look through history and see what type of medicine was given to people, drug medicine is really alternative to what real healing is. That is one of the underlying factors of the failure of our medicine. If ozone was put on the map, it would be very damaging to profit-making interests. Ozone cannot be patented. So who's going to make a profit on this? No one. And it's not going to get FDA approved because somebody needs to invest $150 million in something that you can't patent for profit. So it's a vicious circle. The only way we can break into this is by people getting educated, rising up, and demanding of government to end the medical tyranny and the denial of the availability of these things. It can be done, but the people are going to have to rise up for it. Your treatment's over.
Thank you, Dr. Rowan.
You're very welcome. Your body is composed of trillions of cells. You need to be the captain of that team, not pharma, not some doctor who represents pharma. That's it. You're being spoon-fed what they want you to believe about ozone and other things. And in my opinion, that is because we are being farmed, P-H-A-R-M-E-D, by pharma, small p, capital H, capital A, capital R, capital M. We are being farmed by pharma for profit. That's the whole bottom line. That's everything. That's why this documentary has to be made.
He said, what did you do? He said, what have you been doing? So I said, well, I cook collard greens every night and I take ozone. He says, what's that?
All right, we're back, and we're talking about ozone as a medical treatment. Now, I know the first thing you're probably wondering as a healthy reasoner is, wait a second, if this ozone gas is not ideal for inhalation and it's a gas, then how does Dr. Andre and other ozone practitioners around the world, how do they get it to benefit the cells? Well, let's talk about that right now. The general principle, I would say, is this, is depending on the need that the patient being treated has, once you can find a way to get the ozone molecule as close as possible to where the body needs help, you're likely to get the result that you're looking for. What do I mean by that? Well, one of the most common ways I use ozone treatment is in sports medicine and in pain management for joint damage. And this is a good example of how ozone works when it gets into the body. And so what I will do is I will inject a solution of vitamins into, for example, a damaged knee joint. And then right on the heels of that, I will inject, I inject the gas itself directly into the joint. Remember that in a short while, after pulling up the ozone gas, it reconverts back to oxygen. But in the body, when it comes into contact, especially with damaged areas of the body, now we're not going to be too technical, I promise. What it does is that it forms different compounds called peroxides within the body. And when these peroxides are formed, one of the oxygen atoms from those three breaks off and forms a peroxide, and the remaining two are able to return to being oxygen. And the beauty of this procedure as well is that it tends to cause the body to send several antioxidants into the region of where this chemical reaction is taking place, which means that when we inject ozone in whatever way we choose, we are allowing essentially for a guided, almost like a guided treatment that will preferentially go to areas that are damaged. One of the oxygen molecules breaks off, leaving behind large amounts of oxygen and attracting antioxidants in the background. And then we go through a whole host of cellular mechanisms that take place in response to all of that, which I won't get into today. So for example, when I inject into the knee joint for a patient with knee pain, believe it or not, the reaction takes place so quickly that the patient often feels the relief almost immediately. And we do a few additional treatments to help to maintain the effect, separated by maybe about 2 weeks each time, to help to rebuild the damaged tissue. We can have a second episode about how that happens at a cellular level, but for now, just introducing. And the same thing is applicable for other areas of the body and other diseases. So for example, another way that I use ozone quite a bit in my office is, yes, we allow the ozone to get into the bloodstream. Not quite in the way you're thinking. And so no, I know you're probably thinking that injecting gas directly into the bloodstream is dangerous. And interestingly enough, even though that is generally the case, there are several doctors who use ozone quite safely in that way. Personally, the majority of my treatment for blood ozone treatments are done by instead obtaining a blood sample from the patient, mixing some ozone gas with that blood sample, and then re-infusing that blood back into the patient. And so, in a way, I'm using the patient's own blood to help to treat damaged and diseased areas throughout the body. So, So therefore, this opens up a whole list of potential ways that we can get ozone into the body. So we've discussed direct injection into the joints. We've discussed blood treatments, my two most common ones. The other one is that we bubble ozone gas through distilled water or deionized water, and then we can actually have the patient drink that mixture quickly after it has been made, before the ozone breaks back down to oxygen, and that's very helpful for several patients as well. How else? We don't inhale ozone gas directly, but we use special apparatus to bubble the ozone gas through different mixtures, for example, olive oil, and that forms certain compounds known as ozonides, which are then extremely safe to inhale and that have the effect that we want. So when the patient inhales that, it can cause quite a bit of improvement to damaged lung tissue, obviously damaged for other reasons, and very helpful in respiratory disorders. There's a special apparatus that we can use to do the same thing and place the oxygen ozone mixture, introduce it into the air canal, EAR canal, and that also causes some benefits for people with bad sinusitis, ear problems, or general head and neck issues. Very, very helpful. What else do I do? We sometimes use, we inflate, picture like a garbage bag, and we seal it around the patient's limb, for example, and we inflate it as taut as we can using ozone gas. So we create almost like a blanket of ozone around the person's limb, so their hand or feet or leg, and that is absorbed through the skin and causes significant improvement as well for these patients with, for example, swollen limbs or poor circulation in those limbs, or wounds on the limbs. Also very helpful for healing. And then a nice clever way that somebody discovered as well is to use that same olive oil that we've bubbled the ozone through. That tends to trap quite a bit of ozone in it as well, and it changes texture and becomes quite thick. We can apply those. One of the best experiences I've had is to apply that ozonated olive oil to wounds and to areas of the skin that are damaged, and to watch the tremendous healing that takes place in short order thereafter. So those are some of the uses of ozone. Let's talk about some of the benefits of ozone. Like I said before, I've been doing this since 2016, October 2016. I have continually been amazed by what ozone is capable of. But the general benefits of ozone include the following. Number one, improved energy metabolism. And in another episode, we'll talk about why that happens. It has a lot to do with something called the Krebs cycle. Those of you who want to go and read up on it. The second thing is ozone is very good at balancing the immune system. And so in patients who have weak immune systems, it helps to strengthen it. In patients who have overactive immune systems, it helps to balance it and to get it back to where it's functioning well. So that's like autoimmune disorders, very helpful for that. Number three is it improves blood flow significantly. So ozone results in increased production of something called nitric oxide, which naturally improves blood flow. And that's one of the ways that ozone improves blood flow. So that's a great one for those of you who understand how important nitric oxide is in another setting. You will know that many of the gentlemen who receive ozone treatments are very, very grateful to me afterwards, as are their partners. I'll just leave it at that. The next thing is that ozone, by virtue of the molecule itself, is a natural disinfectant. This is why when you look at your bottled water, you'll often see that it says ozonated. In fact, many of the standards for purification of water utilize how well ozonated it is as a measure of how well it has been treated. And in many cities in Europe, for example, water is ozonated as a method of purification for public health. So ozone, the ozone molecule, has the ability, natural ability, to kill on contact bacteria, viruses, and fungi. And when I say bacteria, the studies have shown that this includes MRSA, which is a traditionally resistant bacterium, and it responds very quickly to ozone treatment. So all of those, I'm sure, must sound really good so far. and oh wow, I'm just going to be very blunt about the fact that when I attempted to present this in another setting during a very difficult time during our world's history about 4 years ago, the video that I produced was banned, and I'm hoping that this one won't be, but we'll see. So anyway, these are facts that are not disputed. And then the other benefit to ozone is it has been shown categorically to assist with the destruction of cancer cells, both on its own, as well as it tends to be supportive of the existing effects of chemotherapy and radiotherapy in patients who are undergoing those. Ozone is synergistic, meaning it helps those to be more effective. And I could go on and on about the effects of ozone. Let's take a quick break, and then I'll share a few more. And then, we'll see where this conversation takes us. Quick break.
In a world that moves too fast, it's easy to lose touch with what truly matters, your well-being. At Teshuva Wellness, we believe in a return to balance, to healing, to your best self. Our holistic approaches nurture not just your body, but also your soul. Whether you're seeking peace, energy, or a deeper connection, we're here to guide you every step of the way. Our medical experts specialize in holistic treatments for chronic diseases, ranging from autoimmune illnesses to cancer. Our treatments are safe, non-toxic, and effective. Because at Teshuva Wellness, your journey to wellness is our greatest commitment. Visit our website today at teshuvawellnessjae.com or call 1-876-787-8197. That's 1-876-787-8197. Teshuva Wellness. Return to health. Return to your best.
All right, we're back. And we're talking about ozone treatment, medical ozone treatment. One of the things that I guess you would have noticed by now is that I use ozone quite a bit myself to help me with my cancer patients. Ozone treatment via the bloodstream by a technique known as major autohemotherapy is one of the basic foundations of something called the Teshuva Wellness ATP protocol, which I presented at the Frontiers in Ozone conference in Santa Barbara, California in 2023, I believe that would have been November 2023. And one of the things we realized as a group of doctors from around the world is that clearly the small case series that I presented showed consistently that the ozone treatments were helping these patients to have improved survivals and in some cases outcomes that even were better than just survival, where we were seeing the cancer reducing in size and quantity across the body, resulting in patients having better quality of life across the board. The other thing I wanted to quickly highlight is that ozone has been, because of the reasons I outlined before, is very helpful for patients with cardiovascular disease, because again, it's going to promote healing of damaged cells, such as cells involved in the cardiovascular system. And one of my favorite stories is about a lady who at the time was 84 years old. She came to see me because her doctor had told her that she had significant cardiovascular disease. The heart vessels were not providing enough blood flow to the heart. And she had read in a naturopathic newsletter that ozone was going to be helpful. And she was very convinced that it would be good for her to do that, probably even more convinced than I was. And so I was happy to offer her the treatment at age 84. It just so happens that her cardiologist is somebody who I knew very well and with whom I've had a good professional relationship for years. And so as I always do, after several treatments with the ozone, I recommended that she go back and see the doctor. And his response was whatever she had been doing, there was no longer any evidence of any disease in the blood vessels leading to the heart. And of course, she could feel that because at age 84, her ability, she was still driving, still walking up and down, but she could feel her energy lifting as well. And so imagine a treatment that when you get it, you immediately feel a lift in your energy. That's one of the things. So I can tell you a million things about what it does from a medical perspective, but just imagine patients consistently saying to me, hey doc, I don't know how to describe what's going on, but I just feel like a totally different person. And I'm not trying to suggest that this is a wonder treatment, but I am saying that at the cellular level, the ozone literally encourages the cells to produce more oxygen, to produce more energy, by utilizing oxygen better. And so the possibilities for what it's going to do to the body in terms of restoring the body to health are endless, because when you open up the ability of the cells to get more energy available to them, then they're able to do their function better. And so I use ozone. I mean, if you stop by the office at Teshuva Wellness, you'll find ozone in use practically every day. It's a fundamental part of our treatment. So we have, at the moment, 3 ozone generators in the office. The oxygen tank is connected, and we will often just pull up the ozone via the syringe, a regular syringe, and we administer it in the way that is best needed by that patient. And sometimes what we will do as well, I mean, we had a very interesting experience throughout the pandemic. We treated several patients using ozone. I had to treat myself because I myself became ill during the pandemic, and I had to treat myself. I had to treat my wife, and I ultimately had to treat my family members. So I'm not talking about theory here. I'm talking about something that I've experienced firsthand and continue to do so. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the Kickstarter link for the ozone documentary, as well as several YouTube videos that you can watch in the show notes, or I'll link the YouTube videos somewhere around so you can read up on your own to find out more about ozone. But it would be totally unfair. It would be remiss of me to not tell you about this most valuable tool that I encountered in 2016. And to share a little bit about that story, so impressive was my experience. I told you I had just left the hospital the day before, never to look back. Jumped on a plane, went to Reno, Nevada, entered the conference, and one of the first things that caught my eye was an ozone generator, the cost of which at the time was about $2,000. And I thought to myself, there's no way, I don't even know what this thing does. But after the first day of training, I had already convinced myself that this was something that was going to change what I did and also change my country back home. And so I got my credit card and slapped it on that purchase, and I still have that ozone generator machine to this day. It is something that one of the best decisions I made medically. And I'm deliberately not trying to give a lecture here because I want to just speak freely about how helpful the ozone has been. Now, I want to mention that in Cuba, ozone is used very, very frequently across their healthcare institutions, and they use some special bags to collect the ozone and then to use a rubber catheter to insert it, or a silicone catheter to insert it into the rectum and administer the ozone gas into the rectum. And what tends to happen there is that it is absorbed and carried in the circulation around to the liver, where it promotes quite a bit of healing and assists the liver cells with better blood flow, all of the things I mentioned before. And so they get tremendous results with several different types of disease, because when you administer the ozone in that way, it gets to spread throughout the body really quickly. And with repeated administrations, the benefits just keep stacking on top of each other. So they use this technique to treat things like macular degeneration, that's in the eye. What else have they had great success with? You name it. There's just a long list. There's a book called Principles and Practices of Ozone Therapy. I'll link it below. It just lists probably a quarter of what ozone is capable of. I want to share this before closing, which is if you visit the website of a certain 3-letter institution that is tasked with regulating medical equipment and supplements and so on and so forth in the US, you will find a statement that is very offensive. The statement says that there is no known medical use for ozone or something like that. Let me pull out my phone and see if I can find exactly what is said there. It's difficult because the myth continues which says essentially there is no benefit to some of these naturopathic treatments. And also the most common thing that is said is that there is no medical literature to support, or no medical studies to support the use of medical ozone. Now, nothing could be further from the truth, because just in the 3 days of that initial workshop I did, and the ongoing training, just in those first 3 days, I was exposed to, I'd estimate, no less than 50 studies, ranging from animal studies all the way up to human trials. And one of the challenges with this is a lot of the work that is done in ozone therapy is done in Italy and is published in Italian. A lot of work is also done in Germany and several other parts of Europe. But again, as you are well aware, as a healthy reason, a lot of this information does not make it across the pond into our so-called Western world. And so it's easy to say that there is no, okay, I found the statement here. the FDA states that ozone is a toxic gas with no known medical use. Really not true. I've already told you the danger of ozone, and coughing to me really is considering the amount of benefits you're getting, and considering the fact that the only way that you could have experienced that problem is if you inhale it directly. I don't know if coughing is necessarily a reason to say that something is toxic, given the hundreds and thousands of people who will take paracetamol or acetaminophen and end up with toxicity and end up in the emergency room. But I'm not going to get all on my soapbox today. All I'm going to say is ozone therapy has changed the way I practice medicine. It has changed the lives of so many of my patients in a positive way. I could tell you testimonial after testimonial that my patients have shared with me. One of the most beautiful ones I heard was a gentleman in his 50s who, after a few treatments of ozone, said to me, "Doc, I honestly don't even remember how bad I felt before I started this thing. It's not just that I've improved, it's that my body feels so good that it's difficult for me to remember how bad I was feeling." And that is a testament in and of itself to what ozone is capable of. So I think I'm going to close it there, because I think I've given you a nice exposure and overview. As you could imagine, if you're interested in doing ozone treatment, you could always visit the Teshuva Wellness website, and one of our team members will help to advise you on how you could get that done and whether ozone might be right for you. Generally speaking, if you are somebody who struggles with low energy or a chronic disease of any kind, an infection, also based on what I shared with you, or blood flow issues, then you could easily see how the properties and benefits of ozone would be easily a benefit to you. In my experience, I've not seen one patient experience a side effect. I've been doing this since 2016, and the techniques that I use are so gentle and safe for the patient that I totally enjoy doing what I do, because I see benefits and results, and I hardly ever see side effects. I'm trying to scratch my head to think of one. Anyway, I think we have exhausted this topic, certainly at a superficial level. Please send in your comments and questions. I value them. I treasure them. I am happy to respond to them. Some of you have been doing just that, and I'm grateful. And I look forward to episode 25. Don't miss that one. It's going to come out either on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and you will not be disappointed when you see who that guest is. It's not who you're thinking, but if you know me well, it is who you're thinking. God bless you, healthy reasoners, and see you soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Healthy Reasonings podcast. Remember to subscribe to this podcast so you can be updated as soon as new episodes are ready. If you have a question, send us a voice note on WhatsApp or a WhatsApp message. The WhatsApp number is 1-876-405-7831. For more information or to become a sponsor, please email wellnessdocjamaica@gmail.com.